The New Triumvirate by Conway Fitzgerald. Chapter 3.
2 long days passed before the boys finally got word back about the status of their legal petition, though it didn't come to them from a paid messenger, as they had expected. Instead, they were summoned once again by Abbot Stolkren.
Dabbit, Pines.
The abbot called out impatiently, and just as before, the two rose obediently and reported directly to the abbot. Abbot Stolkren then led them to his chambers. He did not speak at all on the way down to his office on the 2nd floor. When the boys entered, they noticed an untethered scroll sprawled out in weight on the abbot's desk. The abbot circled his large wooden bureau and snatched up the scroll angrily as he sat. He rolled the pages together ever more tightly. He held them above his head with a determined face.
What is the meaning of this?
He demanded.
Meaning of what?
Asked Marcek, gesturing to the papers.
What is this about?
Don't be coy with me, boy. I will not tolerate your insolence,
the abbot scolded. Yet neither of the acolytes understood what he held in his bony hands.
You went to the magistrate's office without my knowledge?
His eyes were emblazoned by their contemptuous act.
You cited the Tome of Wisdom as legal cause for the release of evidence against that elvish criminal?
He accused.
Are we to understand that you're holding the magistrate's ruling in your hands?
Asked Sherman.
The ruling on a petition that was filed by us, so it should only be delivered to us. Are we to understand you've intercepted our legal request? You've opened our mail.
How dare you!
Stolkren was aghast by Sherman's notion of individual liberty.
You are an acolyte of this abbey. I am the abbot. Any communications to this church must be done through me.
Evidently not.
Marcek snapped back.
Clearly, you were not part of this assignment, or the aftermath it has brought. You had no right to take our documents.
They are not your documents,
yelled the abbot.
They are the property of the governor,
he said forcefully.
We disagree. We know the law. We have rights as citizens of Voss.
Sherman rebuked him.
Do you? Well then, you can explain all of that to the governor yourself,
the abbot said with deep disdain, whipping the wrapped scroll at Sherman's chest. The bound papers became undone as he attempted to catch them.
Therein is your summons. You are to report to the governor immediately. He says he will hear your request and arbitrate personally,
the abbot said with strong foreboding. After a few tense moments of a silent stare-down, the abbot spoke again.
If you are prepared to drop this foolish request, I am prepared to respond personally to this summons, to beg for the governor's forgiveness on your behalf.
The abbot threatened.
We prefer to answer the summons ourselves,
said Marcek boldly.
We will see the governor.
Stolkren was shocked by his refusal. Sherman picked up a stray page from the floor, and the two left without another word. By that time, I had reached the dense rainforest deep within the southern wilds. I wasn't far from Cool Tabot, though that was not my destination. I was seeking out an old friend I hadn't seen in quite some time. He was the archmage of the Kadeek the House of the Learned. It was one of the few remaining elvish houses of magic study, or had been, as I had become unsure if it still existed. I was having a lot of difficulty finding it. There were a few cackling monkeys high above me. They taunted me in their own language for a while, as they observed me, retracing my steps through the tangled rainforest. It was then I saw one within earshot, so I called out to him. Are the elves still here? I asked loudly. Or are they gone from here as well? The monkey swung down from the tree and landed on the wet ground below the high canopy. A few of his comrades, now curious with his interaction, encircled me. Still high above, in the massive branches of the high banyan trees. How is it you can speak to me? No other elves have done that before, the curious monkey asked. Call it a blessing or a curse. I'm not sure which yet. I responded gruffly, unsure if these monkeys were carnivorous. So, have you seen any elves around here? I asked him. I took a step towards him and he took a few quick steps back. I'm looking for an old friend. He used to have a house somewhere, right around here. You mean the gray mage and the other little people who make magic? The monkey asked innocently. Yes, exactly. I recall it somewhere very near here. But all of this jungle now looks the same to me. I sulked. No offense, I said. We like it this way, the monkey said, now surrounded by many others of his kind, who were hooting with curiosity, anxious to see what our conversation was all about. Are you a friend to the gray mage and the little people? He asked, suspiciously. Oh yes, I've known him almost as long as I've been alive, I told the curious monkey. Then you must say so, the monkey reminded me. Several others now came closer to see what would happen when I did. Of course, I exhaled. Solidu des Tramtu, I said aloud in classic High Elvish, now understanding the monkey's suggestion. Just then, a hole was dispelled before me in the vast jungle blanket. It was then I saw the entranceway to the ancient Kadeek Doa. It looked like a tiny, crooked two-story house being held aloft by the girth of the hefty banyan trunk and its many tree branches. The monkeys all cried out with excitement after seeing the mysterious reveal. It was something they had seen before, but it never failed to give them a rise. Thanks, I said as I made my way down the narrow path to the darkened wooden door. I knocked on the door gently. Hello, I am a friend, I said again softly, in my native Iredette dialect. The door then creaked open, and I entered. I didn't notice there was a little person in the doorway below me, who I nearly tripped over. I remained on my feet, though I think I may have stepped on his.
Watch your step, clumsy!
The little brownie shouted out below me in Elvish. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. I meant you no harm, I tried to assure him. The wingless fey creature took a few steps back and checked his tiny boots for damage. He then glared up to me.
Why are you here? What do you want?
He demanded. I'm here to see
Aermine.
A familiar voice called out from down the dark hallway.
Is it really you?
The gray wizard then emerged from the shadows with a bewildered smile. Lassiter, I smiled back. I then turned to the angry brownie. I'm here to see him, I explained with a smile. I hadn't seen Lassiter in nearly a century. He helped me greatly after the starfall to build my eventual hiding shelter within the Iredette. It was his space displacement magic that was used to create my secret house in those woods. It was the same conjuring power he had used here, in this vast jungle, to hide the Kadeek Doa, his own school of wizardry. Unlike my little house, that was larger inside, his house was an expansive TARDIS. It was a multi-leveled mansion filled with private quarters and laboratories for wizards of many different races. I explained to him the sadness I felt for having to dispel his work and flee the Iredette. I lamented the ongoing pursuits by the Voss governor and his determined rangers. Lassiter never understood why I felt compelled to follow the order, as well as Theb's nefarious ways. after the murder of the dwarvish builders and preemptive hits on some revenge seekers, Lassiter had reached his breaking point. Theb had chosen a path of unrestricted violence Lassiter could never understand. Lassiter could not convince him to give up his career as an enforcer and return to live a simple life of peace and learning at his house of magic discovery. Theb's decades of training as a beat-on tout compelled him to defend me, as I lived, just as was prophesied, among the humans. "So what do you think it is?" I asked the old gray elf wizard. Lassiter inspected the amulet carefully. It was the strange black stone amulet I had pulled from the neck of Macy at the Black Crow Inn. That black rock had incited Fay Herslet into a rage, and somehow punched a curious seam in my endless bag of holding. Lassiter inspected the amulet closely as he observed his conjured magic light be swallowed by the black stone within the necklace.
I don't know,
He admitted.
I need to ask Khajiits.
He said, turning to the wooden wall opposite his large desk. Khajiits was elvish slang for a know-it-all. As I came to learn later, the gnome's given name was a near impossibility for an elf to pronounce properly. I could see why Khajiits stuck. A magic portal was woven into the wooden wall, and on the other side of the magic portal, we could see a gnome who was busy with another complicated task in a distant lab within the sprawling Kadeek Doa.
Khajiits, I need you to look at something for me. Very curious.
Lassiter asked.
Can't you see I'm busy?
Khajiits responded. He then huffed, dropped the many copper cables he was holding, and then crossed through the dimension portal.
What is it? This had better be good.
The elder gnome said angrily. Sherman and Marcek followed the same path to the governor's office they had taken last month, when they first received this assignment. It wasn't until they reached the outer door of the public minister's office that Sherman aired his fears.
Wait,
He said to Marcek before he knocked.
do you think we ought to be arrested?
He whispered.
I don't know. But are we going to see this through?
He asked him. Yet before they could decide, that very door was burst open, and out came the public minister with two angry foreign merchants.
But when will we know Mist's decision? How long will this take?
One of the merchants demanded.
The governor understands your need for speedy commerce. Believe me, he does. But understand, Voss is a big city. There are many people, many interests, vying for his ear, always.
The minister hinted. The two merchants then scoffed at his apparent request for a bribe and cursed at him in their own language as they walked away. The minister then turned to the boys.
What the hell do you want?
He asked angrily.
We've received this summons to report to the governor.
Marcek said, handing the minister the papers.
We are here, as ordered.
The minister inspected the document and then realized who they were.
Oh, you two, the scribes. Yes, the governor has been waiting. This way.
The minister shuffled them into his office hastily. They were escorted through a series of back corridors, which led to a large, steel-plated door. The minister pounded his fist on the door. It was then unlocked and swung open by two armored guardsmen. The minister stepped into the marble-floored hallway.
This way.
He waved for the boys to follow. Each step they took brought them closer to the governor, as was evidenced by the increasingly ornate fixtures around them. Mist was known for his keen taste for opulence. The boys passed another group of armored sentinels before reaching a massive staircase. The minister was already breathing heavily from the walk.
This is as far as I go. Head up those stairs. When you reach the foyer, Give the secretary your papers.
The boys took back the summons page from the minister. The minister then headed back towards his own meager office. He looked back to them and noticed they had yet to move.
Go! He's waiting!
The fat minister motioned for them to head up the stairs. He then vanished into the shadowy hallway. Neither Marcek or Sherman had ever felt so nervous. The massive marble stairs before them led up to a destination they could not yet see. Marcek turned to Sherman and smiled.
It's a good thing we climb those 5 floors every day,
He said.
Yes, and also that we're not obese old men,
Sherman remarked, choosing to insult the minister only after he was out of earshot. The two then climbed the massive marble stairs. When they reached the summit, they were awed by the size and scope of the governor's foyer. They were shocked to see that this kind of wealth and power even existed in Voss. This was a palace fit for an emperor. A young man dressed in a colorful silken robe walked towards them briskly. His voice echoed through the hall.
Are you boys lost? How did you get in here?
The young adjutant asked. Marcek and Sherman were still catching their breath. Marcek simply handed him the summons. The young adjutant inspected the summons. He smiled.
Oh yes, you're Stolkrin students. The ones who demanded the return of your report notes.
He seemed greatly amused by their audacity. The boys simply nodded.
Remarkable,
He said, reaching out his hand at them, quite effeminately.
I am Ryolin, the governor's adjutant. He hasn't stopped talking about you boys for days now. He will be delighted to hear you've come. Please, this way.
The adjutant led them through another series of doors and passageways. They then made their way up a last row of stairs, which opened out to a breathtaking view of Voss City and the countryside beyond. They had never seen anything like it. The abbey tower of the Church of the Great Seer, in which they toiled, looked tiny from this high vantage point. They were now in the highest tower in Voss.
Wait here.
Ryolin said.
Yes,
Whispered Sherman back to Marcek.
let's see this through.
He smiled warily at his best friend. Marcek nodded with a smile.
Misters Abbot and Pines, Your Honor.
Said Ryolin to a shadow behind him.
Boys, this is the Honorable Governor Calveron Mistal.
Cued for his entrance, the third Governor Mist emerged from the shadows and into the sun. He had a welcoming smile on his face. His arms were extended like a father welcoming home his lost sons. He was dressed comfortably, like his adjutant, in colorful silk robes.
Marcek and Sherman, it is you. Thank you so much for coming.
The boys were shocked that a man of his power and prestige would embrace them like family. As he hugged each boy, he kissed their cheeks and tapped their young faces gently with his hand. He was covered in oil and smelled of expensive perfume.
Are you hungry? Come this way.
Miss led the boys into a large adjacent dining area. Ryolin lifted the heavy drapes, allowing piercing sunlight to illuminate the enormous wooden dining table. It was covered with exotic fruit, wine, cheeses, and nuts from all over the world.
Please, have a seat.
The governor reached the head of the large table, and a servant pulled out his chair for him. He sat. 2 other servants did the same for the boys. They felt awkward to be served this way. They were modest acolytes accustomed to serving others. Never in their young lives had they witnessed such a flagrant display of plenty. Their many cups were filled with both water and wine, their plates set before them with a selection of culinary masterworks. Yet neither could bring themselves to touch it.
Ah, yes. I forget. You boys are men of the church. You're expected to subsist on beans and horse feather. Well, enjoy lunch with me. I I won't tell Stalkerin.
He laughed. The boys were indeed thirsty, so they helped themselves to the water cups that were flavored with fruit.
My word. Tia Aermine. Still alive. She was hiding in the forest too hard all this time. Hard to imagine. But you boys met her. Talked to her.
The boys nodded.
Please, tell me all about her.
He said enthusiastically. He motioned for the servants to fill their cups with the fine wine and their plates with the exotic fruit.
I believe we've shared everything we know with Captain Sloane. Did he not share that with you?
Marcek said with some food in his mouth.
Of course, of course. But I love a good story, and you boys seem to have one of the best I've yet heard. I want to know more about this mysterious woman. A mixed race, I hear. You claim she still possesses the ability to use magic?
Governor Mist,
Asked Sherman sheepishly.
Please, you're in my home. Call me Calvaron.
He smiled warmly.
well, Governor Mist, the reason we requested the documents to be returned is to complete our report for you. That is why we asked for them. Please, allow us time to review our notes, and we will give you the best possible report.
Sherman pleaded, logically.
Of course. Didn't you get those back?
Miss said as he devoured the savory meat off of a short rib.
Sloane's people can't make head or tails of all that scribble.
He laughed.
We were aware of this. That's why we didn't agree with the Abbot's decision to deliver it to you. Our petition was merely a formality.
Marcek said.
Ah, Stalkerin.
Miss smiled and waved the thought of him off.
He's a bureaucrat, not a visionary. But you boys, you young men, you're special. You're both very clever. But more than that, you're very capable. I'm impressed. Very impressed.
The governor took his cup of wine and offered a toast. The boys obliged, picking up their wine cups.
To your success.
He smiled. They all drank. Marcek and Sherman were astonished by the deliciousness of the wine. They hadn't had a drink since their last night with me, so they both took another large sip.
Ah, see? I knew you Abbey dwellers were keen to the taste of a good wine.
After enjoying the luxurious brunch and a couple refilled cups of wine, Mist gave them a tour of his luxurious living chambers. In his grand ballroom, where he entertained dignitaries from all over the known world, hung a massive tapestry depicting the starfall. That was the catastrophic event 101 years ago that destroyed Voss completely and reshaped the city forever. It was an artist's rendering of the massive shooting star, the event which afforded his father and his followers the ability to clean and reshape the city in their own image. Gone forevermore was the order. The starfall was a calamity to most, but to Calvaron Mistal, it was indisputable proof of the power of the silent god. To him, it was the deepest of spiritual events.
It's not of this world,
Khajiit said, matter-of-factly.
This element is foreign. Its magnetic alignments are skewed. Its spatial orientation is flawed.
He said, with certainty. Could it have fallen from the sky? I asked.
Possibly.
Khajiit was impressed by my suggestion.
Where did you find this stone?
It was on a human woman. A spy for Governor Mist in Voss. She used it to convince me to believe her phony story. She hid this amulet under her clothes. It prevented me from detecting her lies, I admitted sadly. As a result, I told her where I lived, mapped it out for her. Both Lassiter and Khajiit winced at the thought.
Clearly, it has permeating power to dispel magic. But its presence, so subtle. It's inherent in whatever this element is. There is no enchantment causing it.
Khajiit used a focal lens to further scrutinize the stone. It also seems to have a life-threatening effect to fairy creatures. Faye Herslet claims it nearly killed her. She called it pure evil.
So what has Abbot Stolkrin been teaching you over there? At the Church of the Great Seer?
Miss said dismissively as he approached the woven tapestry the boys were inspecting.
The Tome of Wisdom. Ancient texts. Archaic laws.
Scoffed the governor. The boys could find no words to respond.
You both seem to have an insatiable curiosity for knowledge. That is good.
Once again, the governor placed his hands on each of the boys' shoulders as he glanced up to the starfall tapestry alongside them.
Yet you are taught to have an aversion to power.
His grip on their shoulders tightened. Then he tapped their backs in a most patronizing manner.
I've heard of people like you. Selfless, caring, giving, honest.
He said in an almost accusatory tone, like they were guilty of a crime for being so good.
I believe in power. Silent power. The god with no name, no voice. He does not require a voice. He does not need to tell anyone anything. He is simply power to behold.
Mist raised his hands demonstratively up to the iconograph. He turned to the boys with a smile to gauge their response.
When true power is beheld, it is known.
The boys were nervous, unsure what the governor was selling them.
As was witnessed by the Starfall. Power like that. What words need be said?
He smiled. There was a large wicker basket that covered most of the small table that was placed beneath the tapestry. Mist reached out to the basket cover. As he did, he said,
Belief should be in oneself. To achieve. To build. To do. Not to speak.
He pulled the wicker cover, revealing a large black stone. It was placed right beneath the tapestry in an ornamental fashion, representing the Starfall's place in the known world. When the stone was revealed, Marcek took a step back. Sherman stared at the large black stone and then vomited all over the floor.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry,
Sherman said, still coughing.
Allow me to clean this.
Marcek approached Sherman to see if he was all right.
A little too much wine for you, I think.
Laughed the governor.
No, leave it. That's why I have servants.
He instructed.
Governor Mist, we greatly appreciate your invitation and the meal. It was extraordinary.
Said Marcek.
But I think we should probably be returning to the Abbey now. Sherman isn't well, and I'm sure the Abbot is quite concerned.
Mist replaced the cover atop the large black stone. He could see it wasn't just the wine that was causing Sherman's nausea and Marsek's sudden desire to leave.
Would you like to see my doctor? He's the best in the known world.
Mist asked. The two stepped backwards, facing the governor as they made their slow retreat from the ballroom towards the main hall.
That's quite all right. We have tonics for this, and perhaps some Erwin blossom will settle his stomach. Truly, we've caused enough trouble already,
Marcek said, as several servants descended on the vomit puddle. Mist stepped over them and smiled.
I understand. You are two young men who respect duty. I like that.
He said with an approving smile.
Ryolin, see these boys, see these young men. Down to the courtyard. Arrange a ride for them, back to their abbey.
He ordered. Can it be fixed? I asked. Khajiits was amazed by the hole that had been notched in my endless bag of holding. It had gotten much worse. The amulet, it appeared, was cutting its way out, de-threading the very magic fabric of the bag. The magic used within to create the bag was very akin to the safe house magic I used to hide Dan's casket. Somehow, the ingenious creator of this bag had evoked that type of cosmic bubble inside a small bag, creating a super TARDIS where time and space stood still and all things material could be stored forever. Until now. The floor of the large laboratory was now filled with unenchanted magic items and my vast assortment of collectibles. All of my long life's many things filled the room.
It's not just the bag thread that is torn. There is a hole in the cosmic bubble itself. I don't know where that could lead.
Khajiits looked baffled, yet thrilled to see such a strange new phenomenon.
May I hold on to this? Do some further experiments?
Yes, please. Hold on to the amulet as well. If I keep it with me any longer, Faye Herslet will disown me, I said. In fact, Lassiter, would you mind holding on to all of these things for me? Until the bag is repaired. He nodded.
Where will you go now?
Lassiter asked. Well, I need to see where this thing came from. I have a hunch it's related to the Starfall, I told him.
Aermine, don't go back there. Don't go back to Voss. Stay. You're safe here with us.
Lassiter insisted. Safe. I've been safe for far too long. I'm tired of hiding. Action is what is required of me now, old friend. I need to see for myself what's going on up there. I need to see if I'm right. It's not the most dangerous place I've ever entered. Of that, I can assure you.
Can I help you?
Asked the childhood friend of Theb Karu. No, where I'm going, I will need to rely solely on stealth. Magic, it appears, won't help me. Before I left him, Lassiter provided me with a potion. He told me it protected against sulfuric toxins. Lassiter also suggested that perhaps the sulfur vents that had formed around the crater plateau might be an alternate way to enter the city catacombs unnoticed and find the source of the dark stone.
If you're right, this could help.
He smiled. I nodded my thanks.
Please, be careful,
he said, embracing me for the very first time. Oh, I almost forgot. I'll need a teleportation scroll. To get home. I smiled. Lassiter obliged me, and I managed to port myself to the forest just east of Voss. I preferred to travel by way of flight, but there wasn't enough time for that now. If I was going to steal back those few critical documents, I was going to need to act fast. I had to go now, before I lost my nerve. "Well, where is she?" I asked the yipping fox. "She's at the Abbey. Those human boys met with the governor today," it yapped at me. "Tell her I need her," I commanded, "and that I'm sorry," I said more gently. The fox leapt away and into the brush. I turned and began a determined march westward towards the flattened Voss hillside. After the starfall, Voss was reconstructed on the same spot of the meteor's impact. It was no longer a hilltop, now more of a cratered plateau. Whatever burned under the ground below had cause for blowholes, sulfuric vents that released the pressure beneath to form around the perimeter. As a result, Voss suffered through many earthquakes over the last century. As I marched towards the closest blowhole, I could feel the ground trembling beneath my feet. It was an ominous sign. It reminded me of my last hour with Theb, entering a cave filled with danger as the ground itself shook. I then heard Faye Hareslet's wings flickering above me. I looked up to see her. Her arms were folded, and her smug facial expression was turned slightly from me. "I accept your apology," she signed. "Thanks. This has been a rather difficult week," I sighed. "Where are you going?" the Fae asked. I pointed to the sulfuric blowhole just ahead. "In there?" The Fae looked at me like I had grown another head. "Why would you do that? You can't go in there. You won't survive," she pleaded in sign. What did the governor want from the boys? Are they safe? I changed the subject. The abbot insisted that Mist had lied to them about returning their notes. He says the notes were all locked in a crypt deep below the city. As she finished signing, she realized what I was doing. "You're not going in there. To the crypt? It's enclosed. We can't help you." The Fae signed in a flurry of desperate signals. "Hey, I'm the promised restorer, right? So you know I'll be all right? I said sardonically. "Not to worry, little Fae. I get in, find and torch a few docs, and then see if my hunch is right. Then I get out," I assured her. I then downed the potion Lassiter had given me.
Yuck!
I said, coughing with disgust. That was the most disgusting liquid I had ever consumed. It burned my throat and foamed in my mouth. Hopefully that meant it was working. When I was finally able to speak magic again, I used invisibility, fire, and evil protections, as well as flight magic. I figured all of these enchantments would be dispelled as I closed in on the crypt. But traversing this sulfuric pit slowly, on foot, was not an option. I turned back to Faye Hareslet with a smile. "I'll be right back," I said, as I descended into the dark, sulfur-filled cavern.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss an episode. Be sure to smash that like button and comment below. It helps a lot. If you'd like to help me get this book published, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. And as always, be sure to share this story with all of your friends on your favorite social media.